Welcome, everybody. My name is Marty Mascari. I am with the North Central Texas Area Agency on Aging and the North Central Texas Aging and Disability Resource Center, or ADRC. Both of these, I'm a contractor with them. Both of them are under the umbrella of the North Central Texas Council of Governments in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. We are once again very blessed to have Dr. Ron Mottern with us. He is now with the Department of Health and Human Services, and we're thrilled to have him here to talk about compassion, fatigue, and resiliency. But before we get started, I want to go over the CEU information for those of you that are joining us for CEUs. Let's first, to earn CEUs today, we're set up to offer CEUs for social workers and licensed professional counselors in the state of Texas. Anybody attending that's looking for other CEUs, you're more than welcome to go through the process, get their certificate. I've had people tell me that they've had their jurisdictions take them, but please note that whether it's another license in Texas or a license outside of Texas, there's no way we can help you if they don't take it. It's at their discretion, but we are only set up with the two licenses within Texas. There's also a certificate of attendance for anybody that would like one. The guidelines are the same for both of these. You must attend the entire live webinar and Q&A. It's good for 1.5 hours of CEU credits for attending today's webinar. You must also complete the Google evaluation form. That form should pop up or give you the chance to go to it as you close out of the webinar today. But if it doesn't, you'll also receive that link in a follow-up email from me tomorrow morning. If it doesn't pop up for you, and I realize some companies have pop-up blockers and that type of thing, it will come to you in an email as well. The survey link will be available to you until the 5 p.m. on the 21st of this month. And certificates will be emailed after that. It's taken us probably about 4 weeks to get those certificates out once that deadline has passed. So our speaker today is Dr. Ron Mottern. He is not only with the state and worked for the state more than once, but he also is the executive director of the Mottern Institute for Mind and Body Wellness. And he has 23 years of experience in cognitive restructuring, behavioral modification, emotional regulation, and physical improvement. He's published a couple of books. If you're interested in that, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'll be happy to give you that information. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Mottern, to talk to us today about compassion, fatigue, and resiliency.
All righty. Thank you.
I'm stopping my share here.
Glad to be here again.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Glad to be here once more. Let me share my screen. What did I do? Where did I go? I lost you, Marty.
You lost me? I just shut me off. You lost?
Oh, there you go. There you are. I found you again. Okay. Lost you somewhere in all those little things that are open on my thing. Let me go ahead and share my screen to get to the
there seems to be just a little bit of delay or I'm not sure if we're having some internet issues with you, but we got your screen.
Okay, great. Yeah, I do have a 2 minute, about a 2-second delay whenever I talk. For some reason, doesn't matter who I'm talking to, there's about a 2-second delay between when I talk and when it goes through. So, so give me a couple of seconds whenever I say anything, if I'm answering a question or what have you. What we're going to look at today is compassion, fatigue, and resiliency. We want to look at what is compassion, fatigue, what's the difference between that, and when we talk about burnout, what's the difference between those two things. We'll look at compassion fatigue and empathic distress fatigue just briefly. I've provided a lot of information on the handouts, which Marty's made available to you. So a lot of things, a lot of the references and what have you are in that. So I'm not going to go over that stuff necessarily. We're going to get into some of the resiliency practices that we can do and what have you. We will look at what resiliency is, then the different domains of resiliency. So there are about 4 domains of resiliency, depending on who you talk to. One of those is the cognitive domain. We'll look at some things there. The behavioral emotional domain, I know those things don't seem like they go together, but we'll make them go together when we get to that. It'll make more sense when we get to it. The physical domain, and then the spiritual domain. Yesterday, we looked at the cumulative stress and self-care. So at some point when we get to that part, we're not going to go over that stuff again. I'm just going to refer you to that recording. Marty has that on a recording, and the handout he has also available as well. So I'll just refer you back to that because I don't think we're going to have time to go over that. If we do, I'll be happy to go over some of it. But that's what we're going to look at today. So let's go ahead and get started. So compassion fatigue, that first definition there is pretty much inclusive. It's just sort of a progressive and cumulative outcome of just continuously working with either patients, clients, some of you who are taking care of family members. This can certainly also be something that you experience. So, I mean, in any other setting, your family member might be a client, right? Or it might be a patient. So you're taking care of them. So this applies to you as well. And it's just got to the point where we have some of that cumulative stress that we talked about, and I just can't sort of endure it anymore. I've just reached my limit on this, and that's when the compassion fatigue sets in. Now, I've given you several other definitions of that there, and I did want to make a distinction between compassion fatigue and burnout. Okay, so burnout is composed of feelings of inefficacy, cynicism, and mental and physical exhaustion. So you have a nice little acronym, ICE, right? ICE for burnout, those feelings of inefficacy, cynicism, and exhaustion. And those come from the Maslach burnout inventory. But as we look at those things, those can also be a part of what we experience with compassion fatigue. But compassion fatigue also has some other things that go along with it. Might have some mood problems, some anxiety, some depression that goes along with the compassion fatigue. So compassion fatigue is a little more broad, but the working definition between burnout and compassion fatigue is burnout has to do with where you work, while compassion fatigue has to do with what you do for a living. Okay, so with compassion fatigue, it's always possible, you know, if you like what you're doing, or if you're forced to do it because you're taking care of a family member or something like that, and you can't really just give up that job, right? You're doing that. So you can develop some resilience on this. Resilience can help us bounce back from these feelings that we have, this adversity, this compassion fatigue that we experience. Whereas burnout, I can cure simply by going someplace else. Okay, I can find another job someplace else. Burnout has a lot of institutional factors that go along in it. We have a presentation for burnout. If anybody's out there with a business who would like a presentation on burnout, the state does that as well. So we do have one of those. But burnout, once again, has more to do with where you work, and there's a lot of institutional factors that go along with that, while compassion fatigue has to do with what you do for a living. So once again, just as I was saying before, those of you who may be taking care of family members and what have you, certainly compassion fatigue may be something that you have to deal with, and you can't just quit your responsibilities, right, and go someplace else. So you're sort of stuck with that. So it's either experience compassion fatigue or develop some resiliency skills. And that's what we're going to look at today. Now, I threw this part in here on empathic distress fatigue. Some of the professionals who are here, I don't know whether you've heard of empathic distress fatigue or not. You know, as we have got better at looking at the brain, okay, and what's going on with the brain, you know, psychiatry used to be a field where they said it's the only discipline in medicine where you don't look at the organ you're treating. Okay, so psychiatrists didn't have a good reputation among other doctors. But these days we can look inside the brain, we can see what's going on. And we know that there are two different sort of mechanisms working in there, okay? And one of those is we have a compassion circuit, and then we also have an empathy circuit. And what we found is that when we're talking about compassion fatigue, what we're actually talking about is the empathy circuit. Okay, so compassion fatigue was named a long time before we were able to look inside the brain and what have you. So there was some sort of push back in 2020 around about there to start calling it by a more accurate name of empathic distress fatigue, but as of yet that hasn't caught on. So I just put it in there for your own edification. If you ever hear of empathic distress fatigue, that is compassion fatigue. That's what they're talking about, but they're using the more correct term that it has to deal with that empathy circuit that we have in there. Compassion fatigue is also secondary trauma. Okay, so also oftentimes we talk about vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, that sort of thing. That's also what we're talking about when we talk about compassion fatigue. That can be included in there. Doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be secondary trauma, but when we talk about vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, that is a form of compassion fatigue. So what do we do about this? If we have this and we want to prevent this, I mean, that's the best thing, right? I want to develop resiliency skills, these things that I practice, prevent a buffer to produce a buffer that helps prevent that compassion fatigue to begin with. But also, you know, if I have it, what can I do to sort of get rid of it? So, and that is to develop resiliency skill. Now, resiliency is simply the ability just to bounce back from adversity. That's all that is. I've included several other definitions. You can look at those on your handout and what have you. But that's really what we're talking about, that bounce back, that ability to bounce back from adversity and what have you. Now, when we talk about resiliency, there are 4 domains of resiliency. Once again, more or less 4 domains. It depends on who you look at. Some people have more, some people may have less. These are the ones that we're doing today. Okay, one of the domains of resiliency is the cognitive domain. Okay, now cognitive just means thinking, right? So we're looking at the thinking domain and skills we can use to improve our thinking that helps us to build resilience. Okay, so one of the skills in that is cognitive restructuring. Now, cognitive restructuring, some of you may be familiar with it. Those of you who aren't, it just means changing my thinking, right? The cognitive is thinking, to restructure something, I change it in some way, I rebuild it, restructure it. So that's all that is changing that thinking. Now, there are tools that we use to do this. One of those tools is called a cognitive report. Let me, I'm going to switch screens here. So I may have to stop sharing for just a second, and then I'll share the other screen. I don't think I can share on top of a share. So let me stop sharing for just a second. And now let me look at the other example that I want to get at. Okay, and remember there's a couple of second delay here, so it took a couple of seconds to pop up there. Okay, you should be able to see it. You should be able to see that there. Okay, so this is an example of a cognitive report. I call them a cognitive phenomenological report, just because that makes a nice CPR acronym, right? So we have CPR for the heart, you have CPR for the head, right? Same sort of thing. We're getting it to work, right? We're getting it back in shape, getting it to work. We also just call it a thinking report. Okay, because that's what we're looking at. Now, there are 4 parts to what we call cognitive restructuring. Okay, and let me just say that all cognitive restructuring is cognitive self-change, right? I mean, I can't change your thinking. Nobody can change your thinking. There are a lot of people who wish they could change your thinking, okay, but they can't do it. I'm always in charge of my own thinking. So there are 3 parts to this. Part number 1 is to pay attention to my thoughts and feelings. Okay. Now we have 50 to 70,000 thoughts going through our head every single day. And how many of those do we pay attention to? Not very many. Even of those of us who work in a more cognitive field, most of the time I'm not paying attention to what I'm thinking. I'm not doing what's called metacognition, thinking about my thinking. I'm just thinking and doing things, right? I don't have to pay attention to what I'm thinking. But If we want to change that thinking, if that thinking is causing me problems, and when I say problems, I mean I'm starting to get compassion fatigue, I'm starting to get stressed in my life, and I need to do something about that. So that's what our problem is that we're looking at here. Then I need to pay attention to what that thinking is, and I need to change the thinking. So step number one, pay attention to my thoughts and feelings. Got 50 to 70,000 of those things going through there every single day, those thoughts, and we need to pay attention to what they are that are causing the feelings, okay? Now, we don't have emotion circuits in our brain, okay? Our thinking causes our emotion. Our feelings are caused by our thinking, okay? And those, I always say it both ways. A good resource, if you want to read more about that, is Lisa Feldman Barrett. She wrote the book on how emotions are made, The Secret Life of the Brain. She also has a nice little TED Talk out there. If you just look her name up, Lisa Feldman Barrett, and if you put, how emotions are made, I think that TED Talk will pop up there. So it's a wonderful little talk. She condenses that down. Those TED Talks aren't very long, so you can see that. But any feeling we have that lasts over about 15 seconds, 10 or 15 seconds, that is driven by thinking. And we have startle responses, things like that, that are sort of automatic. But anything that lasts more than 10 or 15 seconds, I've got thinking that's continuing it. Okay, so want to pay attention to the thoughts and want to pay attention to the feelings there. And there's a reason we say, well, if feelings are caused by our thinking, why are we looking at feelings? I'll get into that in a little bit. The second part of it is to recognize the risk in my thoughts and feelings. And once again, when I say risk, I mean, whatever it is that's causing me problems, okay? So I have some thinking that's causing me to feel stressed, and that is causing me to have compassion fatigue. Have some thinking that's causing me to feel depressed. It's causing me to feel anxious. That may be, once again, building up my stress. So all of this stuff is something that I want to look at. So I want to recognize the risk in those thoughts and feelings. What are the thoughts and feelings that are causing it? And then the last one, step number 3, is to replace the risky thoughts, those thoughts that are causing that compassion fatigue, with new thoughts that reduce the risk I may have. So we do what's called this cognitive report, this little thinking report here, and we write this down. And you can write it down on anything, write it down on a napkin, piece of toilet paper. It doesn't make any difference what you're writing it on. That's why I call it a phenomenological report. Phenomenological just means in the moment. Okay, so the best time to do these reports is in the moment. When I catch myself in this risky thinking, that's when I want to start writing this stuff down. The longer I get away from whatever the situation is, then the more my thinking is going to change. And we don't do that change on purpose, right? We don't change it automatically. We don't change it on purpose. It's just thinking changes over time. Okay, and I remember the big risky thoughts that I have. Okay, but I need to get to the little risky thoughts, the thoughts with the least amount of risk in them. They lead to the big ones. Once I get to the big ones, I don't want to change my thinking. Okay, I'm already too far gone. It's too much work. I don't want to change it. So I want to try to catch them at the least amount of risk. So step number 1, there are 4 parts to this thinking report. Okay, the first part is the situation. Now, this situation needs to be brief, and it needs to be objective. Okay, objective is the opposite of subjective. Okay, objective is just the facts. Okay, take a picture, a tape recording, we put the picture down, everybody looks at it and says, okay, this is what's going on there. Tape recording, everybody can listen to it, say, okay, yeah, this is what was said, right? So that's what we want here. We don't want any subjectivity. Oftentimes the hardest part of a situation is trying to get it objective. Okay, even though I'm doing this for myself, because this is cognitive self-change, I still like to write it down there like I don't have any choice in the matter, right? I just like human nature, right? I just like to write it down. Well, I don't have any choice in this. Well, we do have a lot of choice in it. So the situation, brief and objective. Now, the situation for this, I feel depressed and angry when I think about my work. Those of you who may be taking care of people at home, taking your family members at home, something like that, just change this a little bit, right? You change some of the thoughts, but you'll get an idea of what we're doing. So I feel depressed and angry when I think about having to take care of mom or dad all the time, every day, 24 hours a day, right? So just change that a little bit, whatever your specific situations happens to be. This is just an example. Then the next thing we do is we write down our thoughts. Now, this is where we're paying attention to our thinking, right? What's that little self-talk I've got going on inside my head? I need to write those thoughts down. I need to write all of them down because once again, like I said, we remember our big risk thoughts. I can remember those for years and decades and whatever. But the little ones that lead up to the big ones, those little ones, which were much easier for me to change, I don't pay any attention to. So I want to pay attention to all of them, and I want to write them down as I go, and I want to write them down exactly as I hear them in my head. Okay. Now, if you think in profanity, then write the profanity down. This is for nobody but you, right? Nobody's going to see this but you. But it's important that you write it exactly as you hear it in your head. Otherwise, you won't be able to catch it in the future. And that's what we're trying to do. So if you don't use any, that's great. I'm not encouraging you to. I'm just saying if you do, whatever it is you're thinking, don't change it. I like to write it down to where it's grammatically correct. No. However I hear it in my head, that's the way I need to write it down. Now, there's some thoughts here that I've gone through. This isn't by any means all of the thinking that I have, but somebody who did this for the first time, this would be great. Okay. This is a lot of thinking for somebody who just started doing some cognitive restructuring. I have people who do that who can come up with several notebook pages full of thinking. Okay. And all of it's accurate. Okay. But anyway, so this is a good start on this. We probably have more of it. When I'm writing down all of my thinking, but also that's a skill, right? This is a skill that we're working on. Everything we work on today is a skill, and the more I do it, the better I get at it. So those people have been doing it for quite a while. Somebody who's doing it for just one time, this would be great. The next part is the feelings, okay? And when I say feelings, I mean emotions, okay? Now, I used to have a pretty strict rule on that when I say feelings, I mean emotions. But sometimes I'll let that slide simply because sometimes my physical feelings can actually tell me when I am at risk of something. Okay. And that's the reason we're looking at feelings. These feelings are just a double check on the thinking. If I've got a thought up there, I should have a corresponding feeling. If I have a feeling down here, I should have a corresponding thought that's causing the feeling. Okay. So it acts as a double check on there. And sometimes it's just easier to pay attention to what I'm feeling emotionally than it is to what I'm thinking. Okay. I know I'm frustrated. Okay. What am I thinking? I don't know what I'm thinking right now, but I know I'm frustrated. Okay. I know I'm emotionally exhausted. What am I thinking? I'm not sure, but I know I'm emotionally exhausted. And I know that when I feel emotionally exhausted, then I am at risk of getting that compassion fatigue. I'm at risk of not doing my best, of getting overstressed and what have you. So that's the two reasons we want to put the feelings. One is it's a double check on the thinking. And the other one is sometimes I'm just more conscious of what I'm feeling than I am of what I'm thinking. And that can tell me that I'm at risk. And that's the reason that I sometimes allow physical feelings there, is because sometimes physically, if I start to feel this way, that can tell me that I'm risky. I've worked with people before who, I remember I had a group one time. I was working with a group, and a guy did his thinking report when he came in that morning, and he said, I wasn't going to come to group today because I woke up and I was just so depressed that I wasn't going to come. And he said, then I remembered that I didn't have anything to be depressed about, and what I was feeling was my allergies. So sometimes those physical feelings can be telling as well, right? So he realized it was his allergies, and he came on to work. He was here in Central Texas, right? We have a lot of that going on. In fact, not too long ago, I woke up myself and I was like, man, I'm depressed today. I don't know why I'm depressed. I don't have anything to be depressed about. I certainly felt that way. But I didn't have anything to be depressed about. And then I remembered allergies. That's what's going on. So sometimes the physical feelings can be important as well. We don't have as much control over those. I mean, I can't change my physical feelings as readily as I can my emotions. But just knowing that this is what it is, right? I'm not really, psychologically depressed. I am physically depressed because of these allergies that are going on. That can be useful for me as well. So I'm not so strict on that, but just understand the reason we're looking at it. Then the last part, that fourth part, is we want to look at beliefs. Now, beliefs are a little different than the thinking, okay? Beliefs are thinking, okay? But the thinking that I'm writing down, these thoughts up here, are that little self-talk I have going inside my head. Beliefs are unconscious, okay? So beliefs are below the surface. I'm not aware of what my beliefs are. I have to get to beliefs, I have to play amateur psychologist, right? If you're not a psychologist, I have to play amateur psychologist and sort of quiz myself and get to what my beliefs actually are. So the beliefs, when we talk about those, we're talking more about categorical thinking. And beliefs don't deal with just one situation. So the thinking here in this thinking report that we're looking at deals with many different situations, okay? I'm sorry, the thinking that we're looking at deals with only this, deals with only this particular situation, but the beliefs deal with many different situations. So these people never seem to learn in the thoughts. If they just do what I tell them, they'd be much better off. I'm not making any difference. All of that thinking has to do with why I'm feeling depressed and angry when I think about my work. Now, when we get to the beliefs, you'll see how these are more global. They're more categorical. People should listen to me. And anytime I catch myself saying should or ought, people should be this way, things ought to be that way, I'm probably on the trail of a belief. Okay, so people should listen to me. I should be recognized for my knowledge and skills. And how we get to each of these is I ask myself why. Okay, now if you're a therapist, don't ever like to ask the clients why on something. But if I'm doing it myself, I can ask myself this, right? So I'm doing this cognitive restructuring. So I say, well, people should listen to me. Okay, well, why should people listen to me? Okay. Well, because I have knowledge, I have skills, I should be recognized for those. Okay, so you have knowledge, you have skills. So what's that mean? Well, I still don't understand why people should listen to you. Well, I'm a person of worth, right? I have some value in my life. And once again, we go back up here to some of this thinking that's going on. If people listen to me, then they'd be much better off in their life. So that's sort of how I get to the beliefs. To give you another example of the difference between thinking and beliefs. Now, if you do something like rational emotive behavior therapy, the REBT, they call everything beliefs, okay? So they would call these thoughts beliefs as well. That's just the way they do it. This is a more strict cognitive form. But as we do these things, as we look at beliefs, the Greeks, the Stoics were really the inventors of cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, very popular form of therapy these days. But the Greek Stoics were really the inventors of that. And those inventions that they came up with, we still use today in some of our techniques. But they called thinking, they called that fantasia, okay? So fantasy, right? And those thoughts were just like fantasies, that fantasia, it's just like the wind, okay? Beliefs, however, they called fantasia cataleptica, which means fixed thoughts. Beliefs are more like rock, okay? So can rock be shaped by the wind? Yeah, sure it can. If you go to Utah, you can, look at the state parks there. You can see how wind has really shaped those sandstone structures and things like that. But it takes time and it takes consistent effort to be able to change those. So The thoughts can change our beliefs. And in fact, that's what we do to sort of modify these. But if you'll look at these beliefs aren't really bad. And we're not looking, let me just remind you here, we're not looking for bad beliefs. Okay. We're looking for risky beliefs. So people should listen to me. Is that a bad belief? Well, no, it's not a bad belief, right? There are times when people should listen to me. Be a whole lot better off if they did, just like my thinking is up there, right? I should be recognized for my knowledge and skills. Is that bad? No, not at all. If I have knowledge and skills, I should be recognized for those. So we're not looking for bad beliefs. In fact, I've worked with justice-involved individuals for over 20 years. And in all that time when they've done cognitive reports, I don't think I've ever found a bad belief. Okay. So, for example, they might have a belief of a man should take care of his family. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a bad belief. Now, how they choose to act on that belief is they're going out and robbing houses and stealing cars and things like that, right? So sometimes we have to modify the belief to reduce the risk and remind them that there's some thinking there that, when you get caught, and if they're talking to me, they've probably been caught already. If you've been caught, then you're in jail and you're not taking care of your family at all. So a man should take care of his family, yes, in ways that don't put his family at risk, right? So we may just modify that a little bit. Nothing wrong. The belief isn't bad, but how they choose to act on it is bad. So we need to modify it. Same thing with this stuff, okay? Once again, those of you who are working at home, who may be doing this, working with family members, you can identify with these feelings and maybe even the beliefs as well. Because remember, these beliefs, you deal with many different situations, but you'll have your own beliefs that you come up with. And remember how I get to them as I just ask why, right? Start with the should, start with the ought, and then go with, well, why do I think that? Why is this so? Why should this be so? And work with it from there. Okay. Step number 2 is to recognize the risk in my thoughts and feelings. So I've just marked these in red that are risky for us. And remember, risk means that may lead me to feeling that compassion fatigue, may lead me to being emotionally exhausted and what have you as we move forward. If you're doing this on your own piece of paper or what have you, just put a star by it, just put a tick by it or something like that, just to mark it as risky. So pretty much all of this thinking was risky. This can lead to compassion fatigue. In fact, now I'm working with my clients' children and their children's children. That could probably be risky as well, but I wanted to have at least one positive thought on there. So I just left it in blank. But all of those thoughts are risky, which means all of those feelings are probably risky as well, because those feelings are caused by these thoughts up here. You ought to be able to look at the thoughts and tell which emotion they're causing. And then the beliefs. Once again, we're not looking for bad beliefs, but are they risky beliefs? Are they beliefs that lead me to become stressed, that lead me to this compassion fatigue? Yes, these are. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not bad, but they're risky in that they cause me to feel, worn out. They cause that emotional exhaustion. They cause me to feel frustrated. People should listen to me. When they don't listen to me, I become frustrated. Okay. Now, if you're a professional, that's probably a good sign that you need some supervision, right? I need to talk to somebody. I need some mentor time or something there. But that's step number 2. Just identify the risky parts of that. And then step number 3 is replace the risky thoughts with new thoughts that reduce my risk. So I'm just replacing my thinking. Once I catch myself thinking these things, I stop and I tell myself, stop, and then I add some new thinking. This is what I'm thinking. So I'm thinking, catch myself thinking, these people never seem to learn. Oh, let me stop. That's a risky thought for me. I know I'm going to get myself in all kinds of trouble emotionally if I don't do something about that. So you know what? What is the actual truth on that? Well, people do learn. Okay. I'm just being using catastrophic thinking here, right? People never seem to learn. When in fact people do learn. I've seen it happen before. If they just do what I tell them, they'd be much better off. Well, whenever I start thinking that, I start feeling burnout, start feeling that compassion fatigue. And what's the actual facts on this? Well, some people just learn the hard way. Okay, it's choices and consequences. My job to make suggestions to them. If I'm worried about controlling other people, then I probably need to seek some therapy myself, right? In fact, if you're working with your family, if you're at home working with your family, that's a good sign that probably I need some time off, right? I need to have somebody else come in so I can take a little time off if I'm starting to think that, it'd be much better if they just do what I tell them, right? When I catch myself saying that, and even though it may be true, right, I have no really control over them. So I'm not making a difference. Well, whenever I think I'm not making a difference, then I feel ineffective. So that's not good. That's going to lead to compassion fatigue. What's the truth on it? Well, I do make a difference. Sometimes that difference is down the road, but I've contributed to the process. Okay. So especially people who may work in corrections, things like that, we may not see the changes. People come to us for therapy on their journey through the criminal justice system. We may not always see them change for the better, but if we look at the statistics, we know, and we may know if we keep track of them, if we follow people and hear about people and what have you. But if we just look at the research, we know that there's a critical mass that if people live long enough, that sooner or later they'll get it. Okay, and I contributed to that process. Okay. Everybody wants, especially young therapists, right? Everybody wants to be the one where the person changes, right? They want to be the person where, everybody gets better, right? But it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it does, and it's great, feels good when it does. But I have to be content with knowing that my work with the person was also a part of what made them better. That they chose to hear that when I was talking to them. So that's just the new thinking that we do. Okay. New feelings. Now, I'm not going to tell myself, oh, well, I'm feeling energized now. I may notice it because I have new thinking going on. That thinking is going to cause new emotions, going to cause new feelings. And then the beliefs, how can I modify these? Once again, these are not bad beliefs. We're not trying to change them. It's next to impossible to change a belief. Think rock and wind, right? You can do it, but it takes time and effort, okay, to do that. But people should listen to me. Well, the only thing I can control is what I choose to think and do, not what other people choose to think and do. Just sort of remind myself of that. I should be recognized for my knowledge and skills. When I'm useful, I'm recognized. So maybe I need to talk to people in a way that they see me as more useful. And then I'm a person of worth. My worth is seen by others and how I choose to help them. So I haven't really changed the belief there. Not trying to change the belief because it's not a bad belief, but I may just add some thinking to that to help modify that. Okay. So that's the cognitive report. Okay. There are many examples of this. Like I said, if you're working with somebody at home, this is more of a clinical setting, right, where you may be working with clients and what have you. If you're working with home, just add you can see how it's very similar to your own experience, perhaps, that you may have, especially those feelings, right? I feel emotionally exhausted. I feel frustrated. Oftentimes, I may even feel useless, that I can't help the person that I love. I can't do anything about that. So that's that. Let me stop sharing here for a minute, and then I will reshare my other screen. So I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, that wasn't it. Stop share. There we go. And where's my other one at here? There we go. Okay, so this should pop up here in just a second. There we go. We should be able to see that now. So that's as we do the cognitive restructuring in the cognitive domain, that's the cognitive report, okay? Now, there's also something that you may find of value called the 4 questions, okay? Byron Katie uses this. I mentioned her yesterday. You can go on YouTube. You can see her work. You can go on her website. It's called thework.com, where she has these sheets you can get. But this is just sort of reframing. If you're a professional, especially in CBT, you're familiar with reframing, and that's just sort of what we're doing here. So the 4 questions, we want to look at the situation. What's the situation that I'm in? okay, the situation that I'm in with my client, with my family member, whoever it happens to be. And then I ask myself, well, is that true? Okay, so maybe I'm working with mom, right, at home, and I'm with her, and I'm telling her things that she needs to do. Doctor has said you need to do these things, you got to do them. And then I have this thought that, I think mom just doesn't care. She just doesn't want to get better. She just doesn't want to get. Common thought I might have, right? Well, then I stop and ask myself, wait a minute, is that true? Is it true that she doesn't care? Well, she's certainly acting like she doesn't care. Question number two, do you absolutely know it's true that she doesn't care? Well, I don't absolutely know that it's true. Okay, so how do you feel when you think it's true? Well, I feel frustrated. I feel aggravated, feel stressed out all the time. Okay, so since you don't know that it's absolutely true, how would you feel if you thought something different? Oh, well, I might feel a little bit differently if I thought something different, right? How would I feel if I thought that maybe she was doing the best that she could? Well, that might change my feeling from frustration and aggravation into a little more empathetic sort of feeling that goes along with that, or a more compassionate sort of feeling that goes along with that. So we're just confronting those sort of irrational thoughts. We're confronting the thoughts, whatever they are, and then asking ourselves, do you absolutely know that this is what's going on? Well, no. So you're making a choice. You're choosing to believe it is. And by making that choice, you're also choosing the emotions that go along with it. So what if you chose something different? What if you chose to think something different about this? Now, let me tell you right now, cognitive restructuring is simple, but it's not easy. Okay, so when I get in that emotion, this is why we want to do the cognitive reports and identify it at the least amount of risk. Because when I get frustrated, when I get aggravated, I don't want to change. I don't. They should change. The other person should change. Why should I change? Okay. Well, that's not what we're there for, right? That's not what our job is, or that's not what our responsibility is. So if I want to avoid this compassion fatigue, then I need to start changing that a little bit with the way I look at things, the way I feel about things, and I am always in control of how I think and how I feel. So that's one example, a couple of examples of the cognitive restructuring. Another thing we need to look at is thinking traps. These are cognitive distortions, okay? These are errors in our thinking. I like the term thinking trap because it's pretty indicative of exactly what happens. There are hundreds of these thinking traps. I don't know if you've ever seen, they have a nice little graphic of all of these things that sort of go around in a circle and how they play off of each other and things like that. If you've ever seen that, it's amazing. It's a wonderful thing to see. But all of those thinking traps we use, and we're human beings, so we all use them, and we pretty much use them all the time. Okay. Now, the more we use them, the more risky our behavior is, right? And remember what I'm talking about when I say that is the more we use these thinking errors, the more prone to compassion fatigue and these feelings of inefficacy, depression, anxiety, stress, these things. The more I'm likely to feel those things, the more of these thinking traps I use. So I want to catch myself in them whenever I'm using them, and it behooves me to learn what they are. Okay, I just have an example here. A common example, which in our day and age is called emotional reasoning. And what emotional reasoning is that means I make decisions based on what I'm feeling instead of what the facts of the situation are. Okay, so I feel this way, so this is the decision I make. Okay, so that's called emotional reasoning. And so, for example, so I wake up in the morning feeling angry, and this is a common human thing, right? This waking up feeling angry. We have a saying for that, or we used to that I got up on the wrong side of the bed, right? So we acknowledge that this sort of thing happens, right? In fact, I was reading a book, The Art of Worldly Wisdom by Balthazar Gracian, and he has a maxim in there, and this was written back in the 1700s, I believe. He has a maxim in there that says, learn to recognize bad days. Some days it's better just to go back to bed. Okay. So we all have these days, just wake up, I'm feeling angry, and then I'm angry at everything. And that's the emotional reasoning. So the water takes too long to heat up in the shower, so I get angry at it. Even though it may be taking the same time that it always does, I'm thinking this is taking forever, right? Why is this happening to me? Okay. When I get angry like this, I walk beside the cabinet and get my pocket caught in the cabinet door, right? Get my pocket caught on that. It never fails, right? That always happens when I get angry like that. So everything I see, instead of looking at it just like, well, this is just the way things are, I experience it as something to be angry about, right? So it doesn't matter if there's a reasonable explanation for what it is. I don't care. I'm just angry about it. Now, the correction for emotional reasoning is to decide on facts, not feelings. So I just have to stop myself, right? So I get up in the morning and I'm angry and the water takes too long. And I just have to remind myself that, I'm just in emotional reasoning right now. I have to recognize what's going on with me. I'm just in emotional reasoning. Water takes the same amount of time it always does. Sit back and relax. you're gonna get into it in a minute. So decide on that facts, not feelings. And like I said, it really helps if I know what the thinking trap is called. Excuse me, and then I know what the correction of it is. So there's many things you can go online. You can look at that. What are the thinking traps? What are the most common thinking traps that there are? We looked at many of those when we looked at the cognitive report. You can identify many of those in there. But this thinking trap is just that, just like a bear trap. That once I get caught in this thinking trap, it holds me right where I am, and it doesn't allow me to move on. And that wears me out, right? That's going to wear me out emotionally. It's going to wear me out physically. And I need to correct that thinking error, whatever it happens to be. So I've just given an example of that there. So learning to recognize those thinking traps and how to move out of them is a very important part of overcoming compassion fatigue. It's a very important part of gaining resilience. Okay. Now, another part of resilience is problem solving. Okay. Oftentimes when we get in these thinking traps and what have you, I don't want this problem solved. I just want to rave at the world, right? Sometimes it feels like I need to do that. But problem solving is something I can use. And it doesn't matter whether you're a good problem solver or whether you're a not so good problem solver. This technique that we're using, this WDEP cycle that's here, is a continuous improvement cycle. So if you're very good at problem solving, great, you can still use this. If you're not very good at problem solving, great, you can still use this. So it's continuous improvement, okay? Unless you have reached perfection, you can find value in this. Now, like I said, this is the WDEP cycle. The W stands for wants, and there are questions associated with these. And the question I ask myself there is, what do you want in this situation? What do you want? Okay, just asking myself that. What do I want in this? The D stands for doing, and that question there is, so what am I doing to get closer to what I want? Okay, what are you doing to get closer to what you want? The E is for evaluation. Is what you're doing getting you closer to what you want? Because if it's not getting me any closer to what I want, then it's a bad choice. Okay. And this is our definition of bad, right? Bad, it's not getting me any closer to what I want, or it hurts me or others. That's bad. Okay. Good is it gets me closer to what I want and it doesn't hurt me or others. So the evaluation is what I'm doing, getting me closer to what I want in a way that doesn't hurt me or others. And then the P is the planning. And that is, question there is, what's my plan? So what's your plan when you get there? Now, like I said, these can be applied to any situation. I don't know a situation where they can't be applied to, but also you don't have to start at the W. Okay, it's convenient just to start at the what do you want, and that question can come in many different ways, like I said, but it's convenient to start there. But I can also start at the D, right? I can start at the doing. So what am I doing in my life right now? Well, is it making me happy? Does it seem to be getting closer to something to what I want? Well, no, not really. Okay, so what's your plan? What are you going to do about it? What do you want in this particular situation? Okay, so I can start at the D. I can start at the evaluation part and look at, is what I'm doing hurting me or others? Well, what I'm doing in my life may be harming me, right? What I'm doing in my life may be harming others. So that's not good. In fact, that's bad. So what am I going to do about that? What do I really want? What's my, what am I going to do to get me closer to what I want? So you can start it there. You can even start at the P. What's your plan? Well, I don't have a plan. Okay, well, that's not much of a plan if you don't have a plan. Okay, the planning, whatever it is, needs to be SAMIC, SAMICC, SAMIC. Okay, the S is for simple. Some of you may be familiar with problem solving. We have the SMART technique, SMART. Some of those are similar to this, but this is SAMIC, SAMICC. The S is for simple, okay? Whatever my plan is, it needs to be simple. The more complex my plan is, the harder it is for me to pull off, and I'll probably fail at it if I can't chop it up into simple parts. Having a very complex plan is not the problem, right? In fact, sometimes I have to make complex plans, but if I'm going to achieve them, I have to be able to cut that complex plan up into little bitty parts that are simple, okay? So I can have a complex plan, but I need to be able to cut it into a simpler plan, okay? Cut it up into those many parts. The I is for immediate. I'm sorry, the A, we're still in A. The A is for attainable. Okay. Is this realistic? Is what I want realistic? Sometimes it's not, right? If I have, find out, I have cancer, I have something like that, I have a family member who has terminal illness, something like this, right? And what I want is for them to get better. Well, okay, what are your odds on that, right? Is that a realistic thing? Would it be more realistic to do what you can to have them as much wellness as they can while they're still here, as much quality of life as they can while they're still here? Would that be a more realistic and attainable goal than saying, I just want it to go away and disappear and have a miracle? Not that miracles don't happen, they do, but what's the odds, right? So the A is for attainable. So simple, attainable. The M is for measurable. I need to be able to measure whatever it is. If I can't measure it, then I will most likely engage in this emotional reasoning. And I wake up one day and I'm feeling good and I think I'm making all sorts of progress toward my goal. I wake up the next day, I'm feeling bad. I don't think I'm making any progress toward my goal. I don't know which one of those is true and which one isn't because I'm using emotional reasoning and I have no way to measure it. So I want to measure it so I know if I am making progress towards that goal.
Dr. Ron,
okay.
Real quick, I think we may be stuck. The screen that we're showing has WDEP cycle on it.
That's what I'm seeing? That's where I am.
Yeah. Okay. You were talking about I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah, the SAMIC isn't on there.
Yeah, there you go. That's what a couple of people were asking. I just wanted to check. No problem. Thank you.
Yeah. This is the value added part. This isn't on the handout. You'll have to write this down. Okay. So simple, attainable, measurable. I need to be able to measure that to know if I'm making progress or not. Okay. The I is for immediate. Okay. Is this something I can do right now? Is this something I can do today? If I can't do it today, my plan's too complex. I need to break it down to an even simpler part, something that I can do immediately, something I can do today. Okay. The first C in the SAMIC, SAMIC, the first C is consistent. Is this something I can do consistently? Can I do it today? Can I do it tomorrow? Can I do it the next day? Now, serendipity is wonderful. And if it happens, take advantage of it. If opportunity knocks, open up the door. Don't just let it in, grab it and drag it in. Right? These days, you don't want it to get away. So you can do that. But that's not a plan. Serendipity is not a plan. It means to be something I can do consistently. And then I have the last C, which is, and this is oftentimes where we need to go with this. It is it within my control? Okay. If it's not within my control, then it's not my plan. And oftentimes that is, that's where we need to look at. We can start with that. We know that we have SAMICC. We know we have all these elements. Don't have to start at the S, right? Just like we don't have to start with the W. But I can say, this is what I want, but do I have any control over this? And if I don't have control over it, then it's not my plan. Okay. So oftentimes that is what I really need to look at as far as making plans go. Okay. So that's some of the problem solving. Once again, I don't know anything this doesn't work with. Any of you are familiar with business and things like that, you may recognize this is very similar to total quality management's PDQA plan, plan, do, check, act plan. PDC, what did I say? PD, plan, do, check, it, CA plan. So very similar. They're both continuous improvement models. So like I said, doesn't matter where you are. If you're a good problem solver, great, you can still use this. If you're not so good a problem solver, you can practice this until you get that way. The ability to make plans, to carry those out, to engage in these action plans that we have successfully will help prevent compassion fatigue. Okay. I don't want to get frustrated when I'm making plans. They're too complex. I have no control over whatever the outcome is on this. So this is what I'm doing. I'm just going to get frustrated. I'm going to get emotionally frustrated, and then I'm going to get physically frustrated. And then I'm going to get cynical. Okay. That's how that, we talked about the burnout, and compassion fatigue contains those same elements of burnout. But that compassion fatigue being ICE, that inefficacy, cynicism, and exhaustion. Well, it makes a nice little anagram there, but it actually works the other way. So I become physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted, then I get cynical, okay, and then I become ineffective in what's going on. So if I frustrate myself, I'm going to wear myself out, then I'm going to become cynical and completely ineffective in whatever it is I'm doing. Okay, so other cognitive exercises. Now, these are the things we covered under compassion fatigue, under cumulative stress and self-care, those evidence-based practices. This is what this is, okay? These are the cognitive exercises in the energy psychology and things of that nature. There's evidence-based practices like diaphragmatic breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, guided visualization, mindfulness exercises. All of those I want to practice. We're not going to do it today because we did it yesterday, but we need to practice those areas of self-care. Okay, so like I said, guided visualization, progressive muscle relaxation, diaphragmatic breathing, biofeedback, okay, relaxation response, autogenic training, mindfulness-based stress reduction, okay, all of these things that help us to reduce stress in our lives. We need to practice those if we're going to develop resiliency, and if we're going to help move out of any compassion fatigue we may already have. We also need to start on these things daily. Remember, most of those things, if you were with us yesterday, I talked a lot about those and how it only takes 2 minutes a day to see positive benefit from something like diaphragmatic breathing, from something like mindfulness. 2 minutes a day is all it takes. Physical exercise takes about 10 minutes. Got 10 minutes of physical exercise, but the other things, progressive guided visualization, progressive muscle relaxation, 2 minutes of that. That's all that it takes for me to see positive effects from those. So it doesn't take a lot of time, but it's something that I need to do if I'm going to avoid this compassion fatigue or move myself out of the compassion fatigue I already have. Okay. The next domain is the behavioral emotional domain. These are the two things that don't seem like they go together. The reason I put them together is because we're practicing social skills. That's the behavioral part. I'm practicing social skills, but they have to do with my emotions. They're social skills that have to do with my emotions. So that's the emotional part. Oftentimes you'll see a behavioral domain, and then other times you'll see an emotional domain. I just put those together because that's actually what we're doing. We're using behavioral skills to take care of my emotions, to develop some emotional skills as well. So these skills, are a lot of these skills as well. I think the Prepare curriculum has about 100 of these skills in there. These are some common ones that cause people problems. Once again, problems being that lead me into things like compassion fatigue. Knowing my feelings. Okay. Now, a lot of these, let me tell you, after doing these things for 20 years, everybody thinks they know how to do them until they get to practice them. And then what becomes apparent is that most people don't know how to do them. Okay. So these are sort of scripted as you go. There's a script for these. How do I practice these? Well, you do this, then you do this, then you do this. So knowing my feelings, one of the basic skills is knowing my own feelings. So knowing when I'm feeling emotionally exhausted, knowing when I'm getting cynical, knowing when I'm feeling anxious. Okay. These are things I need to know. Knowing when I'm feeling depressed. Okay. These are very important to know. So knowing my feelings is one of those basic skills that we have. Another basic skill is active listening. These days, most people don't listen to actually understand, they listen to respond, right? So active listening is very important. I remember that the first place I saw these skills in action was many years ago, longer than 20 years ago. I'm not going to say how long, but I've been doing this for 20 years. So before then, several years before then, I was in Austin. I was in a noodle house. I was having some noodles, and these three guys came in suits, and they were wearing gray suits. And this was over on Burnett Road. Some of you may, if you're any of you from Austin area, have been here for a while, you know that IBM used to have a big plant over there. So this was pretty close to the plant. And these three guys came in and sat down. And two of them began to jump on this third guy. Oh my goodness, they were giving him what for. I was getting angry. I didn't even know him. It was just that they would do that to somebody in the middle of a busy restaurant, just jumping on him. The guy was handling it very well. He was nodding his head. He'd ask a question every now and then, and what have you. And what he was doing, and I learned later, as I went into the cognitive end of this, he was practicing that skill of active listening. That's what he was doing. Look at the other person, nod your head to show that you understand and that you're listening to them. Ask a question for anything you don't understand. That's active listening, right? Well, come to find out, like I said later, that IBM had a manager training program. They still do have a manager training program. Most of it's online these days. Back then, it was in person. And that's what they were doing. They were drilling him on this skill of active listening as a part of that manager training program. So these are things that you're going to use not only in daily life, but in business and other different places as well. So they've been around for a long time. It's not something nouveau, right, that we have. Active listening, one of those basic skills. Dealing with anger, that skill is a little more complex. Understanding and responding to the feelings of others, that is empathy. Okay. Understanding the feelings of others is empathy, and understanding and responding to those is that empathy skill. Then you have the assertiveness skill. Oftentimes when people are more aggressive, right, we use assertiveness. So if I catch myself, not listening to people are telling me I'm not listening to them, maybe I need to practice these skills. If I'm dealing with people who are angry all the time, well, there's nothing that'll burn you out quicker and make you more compassion fatigue quicker than dealing with angry people, right? So maybe I need to practice the skill of dealing with anger to maintain some longevity in whatever it is I'm doing. If I like my profession, maybe I need to learn that. Assertiveness, right? Instead of being aggressive, I need to learn to be assertive in what I do. One of the skills here, this is an example of one. This is an example of all of these have these same steps that you go through. I mean, they're different steps, but they have steps in them. So one of the skills is arousal control. Step number one, pay attention to my thoughts and feelings. Basic cognitive restructuring, right? Step number two, recognize that I'm in a heightened emotional state. Okay, so I recognize that I'm getting emotionally aroused, whatever that happens to be. Place your hand on your lower abdomen. Take those deep breaths in for a count of 4. Hold for a count of 4. Exhale for a count of 8. Doing that diaphragmatic breathing. And as you do that 3 times or until your emotions are back to normal. Do it 2 minutes, you get some positive effects out of it as well. So all of those social skills have those sorts of steps in them that you'll do. And once again, it behooves me to know and to practice these social skills. If I have these deficiencies in my, daily life, that I don't deal well with anger, I'm not using active listening. Like I said, the knowing my feelings one is a good one. Knowing the feelings of others, knowing my feelings comes right before understanding the feelings of others, right? Because if I don't know what I'm feeling, I don't know what they're feeling. So that's why knowing my feelings is a basic one. Okay. The physical domain, there are some components of resilience, and these include getting quality sleep. I cannot tell you how important sleep is. If you were here yesterday, then you heard me drone on and on about getting quality sleep. I'll try not to drone on and on about it today, but I do want to cover it. It's very important. Remember that sleep deprivation is considered a form of torture. Okay, so you do not want to torture yourself. You want to get quality sleep. Practice good sleep hygiene. Turn those cell phones off an hour before you go to bed. Turn the television off an hour before you go to bed. Hopefully you don't have a television in your room, bedroom where you're sleeping. Okay. Because there are only 2 things that should happen in your bed, and watching television is not one of them. Okay, so you want to get that out of the room. Somebody say, well, television helps me go to sleep. Let me tell you, the television does you no favors. Okay, because if you have light in that room, if that room is not totally dark, if you have a light on in the bathroom with the bathroom door shut, that little amount of light coming underneath the door will disrupt your sleep cycle, and you will not get as good a sleep as you would if it wasn't there. So one of the most effective purchases you can get to help your sleep is some iPads, okay, that block out all the light. Okay, that's very important. And a television puts light into your room, so it doesn't, you may fall asleep, but it's going to disrupt that sleep cycle, just like alcohol will, right? So, well, alcohol helps me feel tired, I go to sleep. Yeah, it also disrupts your sleep cycle. Okay, it's not doing you any favors. May go to sleep quicker, but the sleep you get is not going to be quality sleep, not that good REM sleep, that dream sleep that you need to work out the issues of the day. That's what happens in REM sleep. The brain is working out its issues. So get that quality sleep. Generally we'll recommend 7 to 8 hours of that. That's going to vary by individual. I know some people who get 5 hours of sleep their whole life. That's all they've ever got every night. They're the exception to the rule. Okay. Personally, I like about given my own left to my own devices, I get 9 or 10. Okay, I usually don't get that. Maybe on the weekends I do, but get quality sleep. Get as much of it as you need. We know that you need so much of it within a 24-hour period. So that 7 or 8 hours that you need is generally within a 24-hour period. Okay, military is very good on that. Military, studies this. They're very good. Okay, you're on guard duty for 4 hours, and then you get to go sleep a little bit, but you need to be back up to do this and what have you. And then we're going to let you go back to bed for another little while. So you get that 7 hours, you get that 8 hours in there in the meantime that you're doing other things. Now that sleep isn't as good as just a steady sleep is. But it does move you forward. It does serve its purpose. We need to exercise as well, physical exercise. We know now that physical exercise is better than medication for treating symptoms of major depressive disorder. Okay, that study was published earlier this year. Okay, so look it up. I might have included it in there, but exercise, that physical exercise, very important to help combat stress, the effects of stress as well. If you were here yesterday, then you know that exercise is very important to beat the effects of stress that may be acting on us, and then maintaining a proper diet for the same reason. And a proper diet is one that's going to include something like prebiotics and probiotics. I'm not a physician, I'm a psychologist. Don't take my word for it. Talk to your PCP. But most people don't have a problem with it. But having those prebiotics, those probiotics in your diet, maintaining that gut health is very important. Good gut health is good mental health. So if you want to avoid this compassion fatigue, if you want to fight back against it, if you've already got it, then make sure your gut is in order. You're maintaining a proper diet. You're getting exercise. And some people say, well, I'm just so worn out, I can't get that exercise. I don't feel like exercising. Not exercising makes you tired. If you exercise, you're going to gain energy. Getting over that first hump, right? Getting over the hump is going to be the hard part. But once you start doing it, you're going to start gaining energy on that and not feeling as tired. And then getting that quality sleep, once again, can't say enough about that. Okay. And then we have that last domain. That's a spiritual domain. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to church prayer meeting on Wednesday nights, but it does mean that I need to do things like cultivate gratitude in my life, need to develop self-gratitude and self-compassion. We know that those things increase resiliency, okay? Gratitude, self-gratitude, self-compassion. How do I develop gratitude? Number of ways to do that. One way is to write a thank you note. And I think I include these later, but write a thank you note. And people always say, well, can I text it? Can I text the thing? Can I email it? Do I have to sit down and write it or sit down and write it out? Well, you know that if you sit down and write it out, it shows a whole lot more meaning than if you just email someone, right? But if you can't do that, then email them. Do it in some way, right? And if you can't email them for whatever reason, then text, okay? But the value of that, how much gratitude are you actually showing if you just send a text, right? Coming from an older generation who still writes in cursive, right? Younger people, maybe a text is meaningful with emojis, right? I don't know, but when we write a thank you note by hand, tends to have more meaning for some of us at any rate. And if you don't have time for any of that, just thank someone mentally, okay? Because once again, what you're doing is developing this habit of gratitude. So thank somebody mentally is something that you want to do. You can keep a gratitude journal. Just make a habit to write down and share with a loved one the thoughts and gifts you've received from them each day, okay? Count your blessings, okay? It helps to get your nose off the grindstone every now and then. Take a look up, look around, see where you are, see how far you're progressing on your goals, things like that. See the rain. We had a little rain here yesterday. See the wet ground gives us hope. So those of you who haven't been in Texas the last few months may not understand that, but wet ground can be hopeful. So count your blessings, pray. If you're a religious person, certainly you can use prayer for that. Meditate as well. Mindfulness meditation can be very useful. There is something called mantra meditation. VA has used this for years, especially with people with PTSD, where the meditation is you just say a word, right? You just focus on peace and you just repeat that over and over. Peace, peace, or healing, healing, healing. Just repeat that over and over. And as you do that, just focus on what you're grateful for at the time. So those are some ways to develop that gratitude. Here are the 2 minutes a day things. You want to help build resilience, want to help build happiness in your life, decrease stress, do these things. 2 minutes a day, write down 3 things for which you're grateful. Don't take more than 2 minutes. 2 minutes, write down 3 things for which you're grateful. 2 minutes, journal about 1 positive experience you've had in the last 24 hours. Just take 2 minutes to do it. If you journal, that's great. Journal it another time. But for this exercise, just take 2 minutes to do this. 2 minutes of mindfulness meditation. That's all that it takes. 2 minutes to write a positive email to someone. I suppose that could be your gratitude email. But 2 minutes to write that positive email. And then exercise, physically exercise for 10 minutes. We know that those, from the research, that those are the things that, once again, that increase that resiliency, increase happiness in our life, decrease the feelings of compassion fatigue that we have. Another one we looked at this yesterday is the ikigai, which means a reason for being. So wanted to develop that greater self-compassion. And we know that having a reason for being leads to greater levels of self-compassion. So there's a link down below this here. You can go to that link. You can take this free test. Ikigai looks at these different areas, looks at the area of what do you love, what are you good at, and the overlap between what you love and what you're good at is your passion. You look at what you're good at and what you can get paid for, that's your profession. What you can get paid for and what the world needs, that's your vocation. And then what you love doing and what the world needs, and that's your mission. So then when you combine passion, profession, vocation, and mission, all of that together, that is ikigai. That's your reason for being. So it doesn't matter how old we are. You may have decided to retire recently or something after many years of working, but you still need a reason for being. And if you haven't figured out what that is yet, go take the test. Let that help you figure that out. Okay. At the end of this, there is a survey. If you would go, please fill that out. I put the QR code as well as the link on there. Use either one that you choose. Be interested to hear from you. There are the references on there that you can go back and, if you like, read all of those references and things that are on there. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing now. All right.
Come back.
Any questions?
There's a couple of them in there, but first of all, I want to make the point that I will send out the link to your evaluation as well in the follow-up email. I'll go back, and I think we did not. Did you have that in your presentation yesterday? I don't think you did. Did you?
I didn't go over it, but it's on the handout. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll send it back out to both.
Yeah, they're two separate ones.
Yes, and then I will also send you the information that I get from the surveys that we put out. I'll send you that feedback as well. I'm so sorry. Housekeeping stuff. But I will share my screen real quick and go over the CUs if you want to look at the chat. That would be great. Okay, so for those of you that are joining us today for CEUs, we're offering CEUs for licensed social workers and licensed professional counselors in the state of Texas. That's what we're set up to provide for. If you have a different license in Texas or a license outside of Texas, you're more than welcome to go through the process, get the certificate, and submit it to your jurisdiction. But just know there's nothing we can do to help you if they decide that they will not take them. You're also eligible to get a certificate of attendance for anybody who would like one. That's great. Today's course is worth 1.5 hours of CEU credits. You must attend the entire course or the entire webinar and the Q&A, and you must do it live. We don't do them off the videos. You must also complete the Google survey that will pop up as you try to log out today. But if it doesn't pop up, you'll receive that in a follow-up email from me, along with if you would please, the evaluation that Dr. Mottern has for you as well. If you could please do both of those, that would be we'd be very grateful. But no, the Google survey is what's going to trigger the CEUs or the certificates of attendance. So I've got to have that in order to get that out to you. The evaluation will be up for 1 week from today or till next Thursday, and give us about 4 weeks after that to get CEUs out. We get better and worse at that, but usually we get them out somewhere around that time. So, Dr. Mottern, you want to address whatever you found?
Sure. Somebody did ask about the SAMIC things, and Caitlin was so kind to write all of that out in the chat, so people have that there if they weren't able to take notes as they were going. Esther asked, any recommendation for people to drink alcohol or use a drug to help with sleep? Yes, stop drinking alcohol. Like I said, that disrupts the sleep cycle. So any sleep you get is going to be bad sleep. It's not good sleep. And sleeping drugs are notorious for, sleeping drugs put you to sleep, but they don't keep you to sleep. And once you wake up during the middle of the night, you're going to have a problem going back to sleep. You can use things with this. I would suggest using the diaphragmatic breathing, which increases melatonin in the body. So that helps with sleep. the mindfulness meditation before, both of those things before bed. Okay. Some people, I had a client once who found an acupuncture mat, and they said that really helped them with with their sleep. So you might look for acupuncture mat. If you have problems with hot or cold, you know, you get too hot in bed or you get too cold in bed, they have heaters for the bed and they have coolers for the bed. And some of those are fairly reasonably cheap. There's some very expensive ones, but there are some also that are cheap. Our air conditioning was not doing so good. My wife hates a warm bed. So I had to get her a bed cooler for her side of the bed that she was using. That was fairly reasonable. But you know, find what it is that's causing you to stay awake. If it's racing thoughts, if it's something like that, the mindfulness is an excellent technique for that. Anxiety go along with the racing thoughts and stuff like that. But stay away from the alcohol. Alcohol is not your friend on this. It's going to disrupt that sleep cycle, prevent you from having that good REM sleep. You're going to wake up more tired than if you just stayed up. So stay away from that and try some of those other skills. Somebody added a hot tub helps. A cold, soaking your parts of your body in cold water can also help. I know that sounds strange, but it works for the same reason that a warm bath or a warm shower works. Okay. And that is that if the blood is drawn to the skin, and as it goes down, it helps the body to feel relaxed. So it helps you relax. Cold water will do the same thing. Sticking your face in a bucket of cold water, holding it for a while, your hands, your feet, sticking these things in cold water, and then taking them out. You're going to have an immediate feeling of, ooh, that feels good. If you practice it, but then it will start to relax the body as the blood is drawn to the surface and what have you. It sounds strange, I know, but cold works maybe better than the heat does. And for the same reason, it's just a different way to get there. Let's see. I think that was all in the in there. In the Q&A, how does your memory play a part in maintaining active listening, or the appearance that you are active listening? I'm not sure what the rest of the question was.
I think that's what.
Your memory play a part in active listening. What you want to do, I mean, oftentimes people will interrupt and things like that because they're afraid they'll forget what was said or what they're going to say. So they want to do that. But active listening and you can develop cues to help you listen to that, whether it's nodding of a head or a simple body movement or something. You know, the Italians are good body movements and what have you. But you can do some of that. I'm not sure that I'm understanding completely what the question is. Maintaining active listening. Once again, I think that just if sometimes if you're afraid that you're going to forget what they're saying, or usually it's you forget what you're afraid you're going to forget what you want to respond with, and that's the problem, right? So. A memory play a part in that? I suppose it could. I'm sorry if I didn't answer that right. I'll probably come up with a wonderful answer about 2 hours from now when it just hits, oh, that's what they were saying.
Dr. Mottern, you mentioned that the bed is only for two things, and it's not for TV watching. Well, if it's for sleep, what else?
I'll leave that up for you.
I just have to pull that out. So thank you so much, Dr. Mottern. Once again, just exceptional. For those of you joining us, we did this. There was 2 parts. There was yesterday and today. And for those of you that may have just joined us for one, I will send out the first follow-up email. And I said it will go out tomorrow for today's webinar, because it has the link to fill out the surveys and all of that. But when I send out the second follow-up email that has the video links, I will include both video links and all of the materials to both of Dr. Mottern's, both yesterday and today's, so you can go back and look at and have the resources for both of them. So look for the one on yesterday, the information on that. If you weren't with us, look for that in the second follow-up email that should go out in about a week. Dr. Mottern, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Always enjoy being here.
We certainly appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us, and you all have a wonderful